3 years ago yesterday, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 an outbreak and declared a pandemic around the world. I don't know about you, but I was completely unprepared for what was to come. All of a sudden, there were so many decisions that used to be simple that all of a sudden became very complicated. Simple things like getting groceries were fraught with complex choices: when to go, how much to buy, where was the toilet paper. Empty grocery shelves became a reality. Decisions such as whether we should send our kids to their March break camps, but then those decisions were taken out of our hands because the camps were closed, and that produced a whole lot of different stresses in our lives. The March break was extended for 2 weeks on March the 12th, and then it was extended indefinitely. The kids had to learn how to school from home. Here in the church, our decisions, how to close, when to close, trying to figure out how to be online, learning how to operate Zoom, watching the COVID numbers go up and up and up. And the news was all COVID all the time. It was overwhelming, it was consuming, and it was very, very, very stressful. But into that time, my family started to do day-end walks, and the 5 of us would leave what was consuming us and get off of our devices and spend about a half an hour walking beside the lake and talking, and sometimes walking and fighting, but nevertheless, we were engaged with each other. And Zoom all of a sudden became a way for my extended family to connect. And we began a new thing where every Saturday at 6 p.m. we would gather on our computers and see each other and speak to each other and see my son and my grandchildren in New Zealand and my sister and her family in Thunder Bay and occasionally my aunt and uncle and cousin in Edmonton and my father in South River, and we were connected and we were supporting each other, and it made this strange world we were living in just a little bit easier. Stressful times are probably a lot like these Israelite people are living in that desert that we just read about. Their life does not resemble anything that it used to. Sound familiar? Things like how to get food and how to get water are now completely different. They are living in a desert, the air is hot and dry, and so is the ground, covered with sand and bracken. Few plants are able to survive in this harsh climate. Food is scarce, and so is water. And so they start to complain. They complain to Moses about their circumstances. When they walked into the desert, they had no idea how long they would be there. What I find fascinating is when you Google how far it is from Egypt to Israel, if you are walking, when you check that little walk guy on your Google Maps, you will find that it will take 3 weeks to walk from Egypt to Israel. For some way, these people spent 40 years in a desert. So they are wandering around in this desert. God is providing. They are getting manna that is covering the ground every day, and they're able to gather it up and bake bread, so they have food. But the people in the desert remember what it used to be when they were slaves in Egypt, and all the things that they now really have to think hard about, like food and water, when it was easier back then. When they were slaves, they had food. When they were slaves, they had all the water they could drink. When they were slaves, they knew what each day held. There was safety and security in knowing what each day held. They understood the order of things. They had the same place to lie their head every night. In short, in Egypt, although they were slaves, life was predictable, which made them feel so much safer than what they are living now. Now they are wandering in the desert with no real destination, following a man who's carrying a staff, who was reminding them of God's promises, but they seem pretty hollow when you are so thirsty you can't think straight. This desert wandering, manna eating, no water anywhere in sight is not what they signed up for when they agreed to follow Moses to the promised land. But here they are. And as people in a desert, and they reflect on where they've been, and they have no real understanding of where they are going, they begin to grumble. And if you remember the words that were coming out of people's mouths 3 years ago, there was a lot of grumbling going on as we were all trying to figure out how to navigate this strange new world that we were living in. The grumbling gets louder and louder and sounds like complaining, which gets louder and louder and sounds like hostility and resentment. And soon, it's an angry, complaining mob of desert wanderers coming to Moses and saying, "What have you done to us?" And Moses takes that staff. Well, Moses talks to God, and then he takes that staff. And he says to the people, "Come with me," and he leads them further into the desert and takes that staff and thwacks it against a rock. And right in the midst of the people, water springs forth. Their thirst is assuaged. God gets in, right in their midst. And before they understand what's happening long enough to stop complaining, the water gushes out of the rock, cool and sweet and thirst-quenching, water enough to assuage even the most deepest thirst, water enough to remember that the journey that they are on, what it's about and who it's about and why they are doing it, that this is a journey they are taking with God, and that they have been released from bondage and they have been saved from tyranny and the parted seas that now separate them from their enemies and protects them from returning to slavery, but also that God is still providing for them what they need, quenches their thirst with this water. Our lives get dry at times. Our souls get parched and dried out. There are so many reasons that we enter into these times of desert where we feel like there's no water anywhere. Sometimes it's because we've lost a relationship with someone we love due to death or divorce or estrangement. Sometimes we've lost a beloved parent or spouse or child, or we've lost our independence due to aging or illness. We've lost our dreams or our hopes or our visions of the future. We've lost our financial stability. We've lost ourselves in the midst of confusing and strange times. The World Health Organization declares a pandemic and life shuts down. There are many, many ways to lose what we know and to find ourselves in a place that we never wanted to be, living a life that we never wanted to live, coping in a dry and drab and dreary desert. Sometimes we do not know how to cope, how to do much more than to put one foot in front of the other and to go on, because that's the only direction that's possible to move in a desert time. We've all been there, or we will all get there at some point in our life, because that's really the way of things. This is what it is to be human, to spend life in these ups and downs, in these joys and sorrows, in these lives and deaths, in these deserts and oases. Like the woman in the gospel story. Our lives sometimes get to those places of dryness where the decisions that we have made in our lives are dry and barren and life-sucking instead of life-giving. How many of us have made choices that have led to dead ends or dry places where we were just getting by with the same old, same old? Sometimes we make a career choice or a relationship choice or a lifestyle choice that may have appeared to be the right one at the time, but over time we reach a point where we're just functioning and we're not sure what to do or where to go or even how to change or get out of that choice that we made. But when we get to that place, that dry desert place of knowing that something needs to shift, that our direction needs to change, for that woman, that's where Jesus showed up. Jesus comes and has a conversation about God and life and hope and choice and decisions and newness and calls it living water. And it begins to flow again. A woman goes to fill up her water jug. She's an outcast from her community. She goes to the watering hole at a different time than the rest of the women in her town. She probably does it so that she does not have to experience being more excluded and disrespected because she is living on the fringe of her community. From what little we can gather from the text, she has made choices that may have been because there was no other choice that has her being involved in more than one relationship. 5, as we hear. This behavior has alienated her from her community. I'm pretty sure that patriarchy plays a large role in this alienation, as well as I imagine there's a bit of exploitation going on as well. This is part of what makes this story so life-giving, is that we encounter a woman whose society has deemed unworthy to be part of, and yet Jesus does not deem her unworthy. Jesus meets this woman at the well and treats this woman with kindness and compassion and respect. He treats her as she is, as a worthy person. And this simple encounter, this simple conversation with Jesus opens up this woman to an understanding of her own worthiness, and she is transformed. She encounters Christ. She then feels compelled to share this new understanding, this new life, this new self with her community. She was drenched in living water. As David Lowes asks, what, I wonder, holds us back from living into the future God has prepared for us and sharing the news of what God has done as living water? What, that is, are the jars that we would like to leave behind, trading our past tragedies and present challenges for the living water that Jesus offers? The living water is offered to us. The living water is what produces new ideas and insights and inspiration. The living water offers new opportunities and choices that we did not see before. The living water offers new directions and roads less traveled, but fulfilling and satisfying roads. The living water and what was once dull and dreary transforms, and what was once dry and parched floods instead into our lives and our souls and our world and transforms us. This living water is offered to us as well. And it comes to us in so many ways as new ideas and inspirations and insights and new opportunities and choices we did not see before. It offers us new directions and road less travels and compassion and community and kindness. Living water changes what was once dull and dreary and transforms it, and transforms our soul and transforms the world. Living water is a symbol of life and of blessing and of grace. And this water drips into our lives in the midst of our despair. It reminds us that God is always with us and that we are never alone. This living water that comes out of a stone in the middle of a desert, that quenches our thirst, that nourishes our souls and revives and revigorates us for the journey that we go on with our God. So remember that living water is out there. It's in here. It's from God and for us, and it's ever-present and life-giving and can assuage even the driest of deserts and quench even the deepest of thirsts. And it is offered to you, the living water of life, yours. Thank God. Amen.